Welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. This is week 4 of the My First Sweater by Marley Bird knit along. We are having so much fun working on this sweater together. I know many of you that are part of the Facebook group dedicated to all of the knit alongs that I do hosted or sponsored by Red Heart Yarns. You are posting your progress, asking questions, telling me how much you've learned so far, and I am thrilled to have you be a part of this knit along together. By this point, you have hopefully completed the back and the front of your sweater, and it's time to move on to the sleeves. We're going to keep this video pretty straightforward because there's not a whole lot of extra information you need because you've already done the ribbing that we will do on the sleeves. You've already done the stockinette that we will use on the sleeves. You've already done the make one that we will do on the sleeves. The biggest thing to talk about today is how are we going to read that pattern for the sleeves. I have a special treat for you, so make sure you stick with this video so that you can see what the special treat is. And then I'm also going to show you, for those of you who are adventurous, how to knit the sleeves 2 at a time. So here at the beginning, let's go ahead and take a look at the pattern. The link to this particular page we're going to go over is in the video description box of this video, so make sure you go down there to find this link. And let's take a look. I'm using my iPad today instead of paper because I thought it was a little bit more interactive. When you come to the page, you'll see that this is for week 4 and week 5. All that means is we are expecting you, or I am expecting you, to complete both sleeves over the next 2 weeks. So just like we completed the back and the front of the sweater for 2 weeks, we're going to do the same thing for the sleeves. So you have 2 weeks to complete the sleeves. Pretty basic instructions as we go along here. And when we get down here, we run into where it says row gauge. Is this important? And I wrote in here, the long and the short of it is that row gauge is important, especially when you're going to use it to shape a garment or different pieces that you might be working on. Maybe it's a yoke sweater or you're doing sleeve cap shaping. Like, that becomes very important then. As we're making this sweater, I designed the sweater in such a way that the row gauge isn't super important. And if you did not get row gauge in your gauge swatch, you should be okay for your sleeves, even though we're doing some shaping at the bottom of the sleeves, as long as the total length of your sleeve does not exceed the amount given. All right, so I'm not going to worry about row gauge for the sleeves of this sweater, but for future sweaters, especially if you're making some that has a lot of different shaping and you have sleeve cap shaping and such, I want you to pay attention to the row gauge because being 1 or 2 rows off for 4 inches could really throw off your sleeve length or the shaping of whatever you're working on. So for this sweater, it's not that important, but for future sweaters, it is something to take note of. All right. As we go along here, I put all of the instructions once again in one place so that way it's easy for you to print off. So this is all the basic sweater details or pattern details, just like we had before. Nothing has changed there. And then we get down here where it says pattern continued. Obviously it's sleeves, you're going to make 2. And then all of this right here, all of this, those are the instructions for the sleeve, and they seem a little bit confusing. Let's read through one of these really quickly. As I widen this up, I'm going to jump down here to where it says increase row. It says knit 1, make 1, knit to last stitch, make 1, knit 1, 2 stitches increased. And then it gives you the total stitch count you have. Then it says work, and then it gives you the total number of rows even. So that would mean you work those in stockinette. Then it says repeat these number of rows X number of times. Whoa, that can be so confusing, right? You're like, okay, so I just did an increase row. Now I'm supposed to do 3 rows even or 1 row even. And what does even mean? Even means stockinette stitch because we're working in stockinette stitch. Okay, that means if I'm on the wrong side, I'm going to purl. If I'm on the right side, I'm going to knit. All right, so then that's a total of 4 rows. We have the increase row and then 3 even rows, or maybe it's a total of 2 rows. It's an increase row and then an even row. And then I have to do those rows how many times? So we can get really confusing. As you're working with sweater patterns, whether it's this one or future ones, whenever you come to a part of the pattern where there is shaping involved, and it talks about shaping on this row, do this many rows of XYZ, and then shape again on this row, and then do that so many more times, and blah, blah, blah. I find it easier to take those instructions and write them out row by row, so that way I can easily tick off the instructions as I go and know that I'm following along correctly. So that's what I have done for you. I've taken all of these written instructions here that can be really, really confusing, and I've written them row by row in a downloadable PDF. So as you scroll down to this section, don't you love my Bitmoji? I think they're hilarious. You'll see right here that this part here where it is in pink, it says click this link to get the spreadsheet PDF. It also has it down here. Here is the link. And then it has it down here. Here's a link as it's written out. I have it so many different places so that way you guys can see. All you're going to do is you're going to click that link, and it's going to take you to a PDF Google Sheet. And this PDF Google Sheet is 21 pages. It's a lot of pages, but what you're going to see here is it's written out for you. The first part here, it has the cuff sizes, and this is for all the sizes. It's the cuff instructions. You follow the cuff instructions until it measures 3 inches. And then for all of the sizes, you would work 4 rows even, or 4 rows of stockinette stitch. Notice I have check marks over here, or check boxes, so if you want to check them off as you go, you can. Then we move on to where it's the sleeve instructions. In the yellow here, this is a brief synopsis of what the instructions are that we just looked at on the website. Okay, I put them in yellow so that way they are on this page for you, so you can always go back and reference them and see what's going on. Okay, so these right here, those are the instructions as they're written on my actual website. Okay, so here are the instructions as written in the pattern. All right, so that's what this is here. You'll see right here, it says below you will find these instructions written out row for row for each size. Find the size and follow those instructions. So if we start here at the beginning, right here, it says sleeve increases, size small. So the size small would follow all of these instructions row for row, all the way down through row 64. And then we're back to a yellow section, and this yellow section lets you know, oh, okay, so this is how it's written in the pattern. This is everything that I would find on the other page as well. It says work even in stockinette until the piece measures 13 inches or the other sizes as it may be, right? And then it says after the ribbing. So it'd be 13 inches after the ribbing, and then it gives you the total length as it would be. When I said earlier, make sure the total length of your sleeve does not exceed the total amount given in the pattern, this is the part I'm talking about. If your gauge is something different and your row gauge is what I'm saying. If your row gauge came out slightly different, you're working all of these increases for the size small, you want to make sure that your stockinette portion does not exceed 13 inches total or 16 inches for the complete length of the sleeve. Otherwise, it's going to be too long. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. If we carry on, you'll also notice we have it for the medium and all the other sizes. Let's take a look here at the medium. All of the patterns are constructed in the same layout here. So we have the row count over here. We have whether you're on the right side or wrong side right here. These are the actual instructions of what you're doing. Here's your stitch count. So it says here for the medium sleeve, we're going to start off with 35 stitches to start. And then every time you do an increase row, you're going to increase by 2 stitches, and you can check that off. And at the very end of the instructions, you'll see that in red, I have the total number of stitches you're supposed to have by the end of that increase section. And as I mentioned, I did that the same for all of the different sizes. See how much I love you guys? I mean, how great is this to be able just to say, oh, I just need to tick off each little pattern as I go, or each row as I go. And if you ever have a doubt of if I've written something correctly in the spreadsheet portion, you can always go back to the top where the other yellow section is and double check my words, or go back to the original website, written out instructions, and check my words there as well. But like I said, it's all of the instructions right here. And this is a downloadable PDF, so you can print this off and use it to mark everything up as you go along. Pretty neat, right? All right, so here's my request first off. If you are sharing this pattern, great. I love that you're sharing my pattern, but please always share the URL to my website. Don't share the link directly to this PDF. It's better for people to go to my website and then click from the website to the PDF. So I'm going to request that you always only share from the website. Don't share this PDF, please. And that's basically it. Okay, so those are the instructions for the sleeve. As I mentioned, you're working the cuff, pretty simple. You know how to do this cuff. You also know how to do the make one because you did that in your sweater. And then you know how to work in stockinette stitches. So you know how to do the sleeve stitches. There's nothing new I can teach you here. Other than if you're one of those people that's like, oh my gosh, working the front and the back of the sweater was really hard for me because I felt like I was going to get like second sock syndrome, right? It's like I made the front, now I have to do it again for the back. That happens a lot of the times too when people make sweaters and they're working on sleeves. So one way to combat that is to make both sleeves at the very same time. And you can do that by, having two sets of needles and casting on each set of needle or each pair of needles and working, like maybe work 3 inches and then work 3 inches and then work 5 inches and then work 5 inches or however it may be on two separate sets of needles. Or you can get one long needle and cast on all the stitches on one long needle and have 2 balls of yarn going at the same time as you're working each row of the sweater. Now, the tricky part of doing it like that is remembering where you finished, I guess is what I want to say. Like you want to make sure if you finish, let's say you finish this sleeve and you have to put it down to go do something else. If you pick it back up and you just go back and you work along this sleeve, now you have a row here on this one that hasn't been worked because you just worked this one twice. Does that make sense? So it's important to be able to keep track of where you are in the pattern. Okay, so let me show you how you would cast on for two sleeves on one set of needles and how you would get started working on those. All right, so let's do that part now. Isn't this fun? All right, so I'm just going to cast on some stitches here. I've grabbed some basic Chic Sheep yarn and a pair of needles. And I'm just going to use a long tail cast on, and I'm not even going to count the number of stitches. I'm just going to cast on because we're just simulating how we would do this, okay? So la 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 la, this would be 1 ball of yarn. You can do this with just 1 ball of yarn to make both sleeves. You'd have to pull from the inside and then pull from the outside, but I don't recommend doing that because it just becomes a real pain in the butt. So it's much better to have 2 balls of yarn. So let's pretend this is 1 ball of yarn. And so that way you can tell the difference between the 2 balls of yarn. I'm going to change colors. So let's grab this pretty green color, if I can get it to come out. And let's cast on some stitches with the pretty green color. So this would be as if you cast on with 1 ball of yarn for 1 cuff, and now we're taking another ball of yarn and we're casting on for another cuff. Pretty simple, nothing new here. It's the long tail cast on just like you would normally do. It's written in the pattern, yada, 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 and you would move on, okay? So now I have 2 sleeves ready to go. The trick here is that I need to keep track of where I am. And the best way to do that is whenever the yarn, if I'm looking at the needle just like this, the yarn is going to be on the same side of the sleeve at the end of a completed row. And I'm going to say a completed row is when you go across both of the sleeves. So for example, I'm going to turn my work here so that it goes in my left hand. I'm going to arrange my yarn so that it doesn't get tangled. So I put 1 over here, put 1 over there. All right, here we go. So I'm just going to knit across these stitches. You would obviously be working in ribbing, but I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to show you how to work 2 sleeves at the same time. It really is super easy as long as you keep the yarn separated and you keep track of where you are. Alrighty here. Okay, so I just finished that sleeve And you'll notice that my tails, all right, or not my tails, my working yarn. So on this sleeve, see my working yarn is over here because it's ready for me to work with it. And on this one, it's also in the middle. So they're like meeting up in the middle. That's my first clue that, hey, Marley, you haven't completed a full row across both sleeves yet. You've only completed it on one. The tricky part here is if I were to set this down and get my needles jostled around, I'd have to really take a look at my work to see which one I actually completed a row on. And for that, I would just have to read my knitting. But the best thing to do is don't ever set your work down and go do something else, like finish an entire section on both of the sleeves. And all you would do here is pull this up and you would just continue on knitting. But this time, I'm going to knit with the yarn for the other sleeve. See how this works? One thing, I have friends, one thing that they've done before is they've used stitch markers to their advantage. Whenever they complete a row on a sleeve, they will take a stitch marker and put it on that sleeve and leave it there. It's just a visual reminder for them to know that they have finished a row on that sleeve. I think whatever you need to do to keep track of where you are in the pattern, if you're working your sleeves in this method, whatever you need to do, just do it. But you'll notice here, so now I finished the end of both sleeves. See how my working yarn, it's at the different points. So I know I have finished a complete row across both sleeves. Rotate my work, move the yarn so that way it stays separated, and I continue on. So another thing, so here's how my friends have used stitch markers. I'll show you this so it's in case it's some way that you guys are interested in doing. So let's say I'm finishing this row, I'm gonna go across, I'm just knitting, or I'm doing my ribbing, or whatever it is. Obviously this would be ribbing if this were the cuff of your sleeve, but I'm just doing stock or garter stitch just for demonstration purposes. When they get to the end of this sleeve, and maybe they're forgetful and they know that they have to get up and down a lot and put their work down, what they will do is they will grab a removable stitch marker and they will literally just put it on that sleeve. So then they're like, okay, I have finished, like, let's call it row A or whatever, on this sleeve, and now I can put it down. I'm like, oh, all right, I don't know where it is. And so I come back, I'm like, oh my gosh, where am I? Oh, there's my marker. That means I just finished with this one. So I'm ready to start this one. Okay, so I can move this and put this in play and I can carry on. Okay, you see how this works? So they keep track of where they are by having this stitch marker. So then when they finish this particular row on this sleeve, they do move the marker over here to this sleeve, because then they're like, oh, that's the one I just finished with. So I know that that's where I need to start again. So I'll show you how that works. Let's get to the end of this. So this is where me and my friend are like, okay, so I finished that one. I'm gonna take my marker off of this one. I'm gonna put it over here on this one. Cool, I can turn my work and I'm ready to get started again. Does that make sense? So it's a way to use a marker to your benefit, just to be a visual reminder of where you are in a pattern. I also have friends who will use stitch markers just that they've made and put it between the two sleeves. That's really more important as the sleeves get larger and the yarn wants to kind of be real close together as it's on the cord. So they'll put a marker there to kind of indicate, hey, stop using the yarn for this sleeve because we're getting ready to work on this sleeve over here. So they'll use a marker in place right there. All right. Hopefully that's not too confusing. It's just another way that if you wanted to make both sleeves at the same time on the same needle, you could do it this way. Again, you can make both sleeves at the same time using two separate needles. If you have them, do it that way and just work along that way. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. You can make them all both individually, one at a time. I don't care, as long as you make your sleeves. I know that some of you in the group asked me about making the sleeve lengths different. The thing to remember there is you need to know how long you want your sleeve to be from where your sweater is going to hit. Remember, this is a drop shoulder sweater, so the sleeve is not going to end right here at the top of your shoulder. It's going to land down here a little bit more. So if you're going to change the length of your sleeve, you're going to have to play around with where the actual sweater is going to hit on your body before you mess around with the length. I'm not going to give any extra instructions on adjusting the sleeve lengths. If that's something you'd want to do, you're going to have to calculate your row gauge, how long you want your sleeves, and then figure out how often you want to do any sort of shaping, if you want to do shaping, and adjust your sleeve length from there, okay? So there is that. You can adjust the sleeve length, but you're on your own for that one, okay? So I've written the instructions so that it is the long sleeve, just like it is in the sample. Okay, I think that is everything. Good luck this week. I hope you do a great job. Don't forget, next week we will do another question and answer for week 5 live right here on YouTube. I don't think my mom will join me for that next one. It'll just be me, but I'm excited. You guys are doing a really great job. I'm so proud of you. Keep up the good work. Make sure you smash that like button, and I'll talk to you guys later. I'm Marley Bird, proud national spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the channel. If you want more videos just like that one, check out some of these other videos that I've already handpicked for you. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that way you're up to date whenever I release a new video. And don't forget, smash that like button, as my kids say. Bye, guys.